All right, so last time we got our legs drawn in here and positioned and tilted at compound angles. So now we need to drill our holes for our leg tendons to go into. So if you look at this guy, there's no hole here. Now, if you're familiar with SketchUp, you know that you can't push-pull a hole on a curved surface, or at an angle. So when you draw a circle here and you try to push pull that guy, it's going to push pull straight on the blue axes, and it's not going to cut through like if you were to push pull on a flat surface. So like right here, put a circle here, we're going up here to another flat surface, it'll cut it through. Where this guy, it just blew through because that curved surface, and it doesn't know how to handle that geometry. It doesn't know what you want to do. So we're going to use a tool that comes with SketchUp Pro called Solid Tools, and it's these guys right here. Pull it down here. Basically, it will take two components and do certain things to it depending on which one of these tools you use. So it'll intersect all the places that those two components touch. Or this guy, it will combine the two together. Then you have subtract, trim, and then split two things apart. So we're going to use the subtract here and the trim. So for solid tools to work, you want to make sure your components and groups are solid. So no extra lines or faces or breaks in anything. So to double check to make sure everything is a solid, there is an extension called Solid Tools that you can get from the extension warehouse. And basically it just checks your geometry. So if you click on this guy and you hit solid tool, it'll say no errors, everything's good to go. So we'll double check this guy, same thing. So if there was something amiss, so let's say we had a hole in our geometry there, and we select solid tools, and then we select this, it's going to say, hold on, there are some issues here. If the solid inspector can fix it for you, you can hit fix all, and it'll fix all those issues for you. Or if it can fix some but not all, this button that says info will say fix, and so you can click fix and it'll fix it for you. But here it's not really sure how to handle this hole here, so it's giving me an error or info, and it's highlighting what is wrong. So these areas in red are highlighting what's wrong, and if you hit info, it's going to show you, tell you a little bit about what's going on. So let's go back here, and I'm going to heal this up. All right, we'll soften and smooth that line. So now when we select this guy and hit solid tools, it says all's good. All right, so let's show you how this works. Now, before I do this, I'm going to select this seat, and I'm going to hit Control to make a copy. Just move it over here and make a copy of it. And then I'm going to right-click, make unique, and that's because I'm going to want this shape later on to trim the legs. And so this will just be a really easy way to create a cutter to trim the tops of the legs off. All right, so now I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to make a copy of it. And then if I go up here to solid tools and go to subtract, I can select my cutter. So you select the cutter first. So I'm going to subtract this from this. All right. And then it basically used that cutter to cut through and cut our angled hole the perfect size. Control Shift V, paste in place is my shortcut key to paste that back in. All right, so now pasting the leg in place every single time is kind of a pain. So instead of using subtract, you can use trim. So I'm going to click the trim tool, and then I'm going to select my cutter and then select my seat. All right. And so now if we select this guy and M to move, you can see that it cut out the shape of the leg through the seat, but it preserved our leg there. So we'll just do that for each one here. Select this guy, trim it from this guy. Back here, select this guy, trim it from this guy. Whoops. All right, so now we have all our holes in our legs, but our legs are still sticking through the top. So let's go back over here, and our seat that we saved, I'm gonna select this guy, M to move, and we'll just make a copy of this piece right here. I don't need this anymore. All right, so for this to be a cutter, I need it to be a solid. So I got to turn it into a solid before I can use it as a cutter. Right now, it's just like a sheet of paper. It's one surface. So let's enter back in here, and I'm just going to draw a line up here. And we'll delete that guy. And we'll bring our radius up here. I'm going to select this guy, and then I'm going to use Curve-Aloft extension to create my curve here. Whoops. Select this guy. All right, and then we'll close this up. All right, so now I have a solid to trim our legs. So, M to move. I'm going to move this guy over here. All right, let's hide this. All right, so now I can trim. All right, so it's giving me an error that this is not a solid, and it's highlighting up this edge. And so one thing I forgot is when you use Curve-Aloft, it automatically groups all that geometry. So right now that this geometry is its own separate group from this. So I need to explode this so that way it's sticky to these guys. So that way this geometry merges together. So now, so we have reverse faces. So something's going on with this guy. So I'm just going to say fix and let it fix it. All right. So now let's try to trim it. So we go trim this from this. All right. Trim this from this. Trim this from this. And I'm hitting the space bar to get my selection tool back so I can select it again. It'd be nice if I could just reset each time, but for some reason the extension doesn't, or the tool doesn't allow that. All right, so now that I've trimmed all those guys, I should be able to move this guy straight up, and we'll unhide our seat. And so now we have those guys perfectly trimmed to the shape of the seat, like if you were to have sanded or grounded it in the shop. All right, so one final thing to notice now, whenever you use solid tools, it breaks the components. So these guys are no longer components, they are now groups. So if you were to select this leg, it's no longer a component, it's a group. It's acting separate from itself. So, which is good in some cases it's not good. If it were to have kept the components, this angle and this angle, they'd all be different. So you'd want to have made them unique since each one of these angles is different. In some other situations, it kind of sucks that it doesn't keep it as a component, but it's something to be aware of, that these guys are no longer components. So if you wanted them to be a component, you would have to right click, make component, and convert it to a component. So now the last thing we want to use solid tools for is to set our chair height. So I'm going to select this guy. All right, so M to move, and I'm going to make sure that I'm snapped on my origin here because that's an easy place to reference from. So the top of the chair is where we're going to measure from. So we'll snap right there. And then I'm going to move straight up 18 inches. We want an 18-inch seat, right? And so now I'm going to draw a square across there. And so there are my legs sticking out there. So let's P to push pull to make this into a solid. We'll make it a group. And so now we can use this guy with our trim tool to trim each one of these. All right, so now if we delete this guy, all right, so now our legs are cut at the same position, except we have an issue with this leg. There we go. All right, so now our legs are all cut at the same height. All right, so that's it for this guy, how to use solid tools to trim your legs and cut angled holes through your stick chair seat.